Grew up at the base of the Sierras.
Where this book begins.
I'm gonna go with horse death on this one.
Horse death. How many outdoorsy stories do we have about, men who run ultra marathons?
Yeah, there's a bear at the campsite, and she turns to us and says, all I gotta do is outrun you guys.
Welcome to the Besties in the Books podcast, guys. I'm Liz.
And I'm Ashley, and today we're going to be diving into the wild with Wild by Cheryl Strayed. See what I did there? This is going to be our second memoir feature / nonfiction book for this podcast, and it's also, for now, kind of like our completion for our Books That Made Us series, until we continue on later, at a later date. Maybe we do like Books That Made Us Scared. I don't know,
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. This is the first I'm hearing of this, but I like that idea.
Into my head because I never want the chapters to close. Okay, I never want to put a full pin in it. So, I mean, obviously this series has been more about books that made us like who we are in our formative years, but hey, maybe we can continue it in a different capacity. You guys let us know.
It could be like books that made us get into fantasy, books that made, me get into dark romance, books that made us scared. I do like that one for us horror girlies,
Yeah.
Books that made us.
I'll write that down, guys. I will write that down.
It's a good idea.
Handy dandy notebook. Yeah. Let's do it. Okay. But what are we here for, Liz? What is this episode about?
So
let the people know.
If you've been following along, this is our third installment. As we've just said, we're not ready to wrap it up. So it's this section is over, but it's not a wrap up on Books That Made Us. So we did elementary school edition where we reread. Well, Ashley reread. I read for the first time The Dark is Rising. We did high school edition where we reread The Great Gatsby and came to the conclusion that we love it even more than we did back then. Mm-hmm. And now we're here in the college years time.
Yes.
And that's how we, came around to reading Wild. So, if you're new here, what we do is basically each come to the table with 5 books that made us from this time period. Mm-hmm. We literally write them down, put them into a hat, pick one out to reread. And Wild was one of my picks.
Yeah, if you missed that video, I'll pop a little tag up here if you're watching the YouTube. You can just click on that, watch that video first, come back if you want. Mm-hmm. And in the description box of the podcast if you want to see all those.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're fun. It's fun just like finding out. I mean, Ashley and I have been best friends since the 9th grade. I still had no idea what a lot of the books that she would bring to the table, like for any of these were. So that was cool.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
And it's so nostalgic, especially the last episode, guys. I mean, I think we were all like crying over Borders, crying at the club.
Yeah. My sister just texted me about that episode today. She was like, R.I.P. Borders and concert tickets that weren't $1 million. I'm like, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So we cover all things.
We cover all the stuff.
Yeah.
So Wild was one of my picks. So this was a first time reread for me. So I had not reread it since, my early mid-20s, whenever that time was. What is time? And then this was Ashley's first time reading it.
Yeah, it was because I was confused on that episode if I had read it or not. I don't think I did.
Okay, but still
now
not
I'm
sure.
Still confused. Even if I did, maybe I would have started it or maybe considered it at the library because it wasn't like. But I watched the movie for sure in the movie theaters, which we'll talk about, of course, because we did do a rewatch. So I don't think I read it, but hey,
Who
felt
knows?
new to me. Everything felt new to me.
What
but
happened
not
10 to 15 years ago?
Familiar.
We don't know.
Let's consider it a first read for me. I'm okay with that label. Yeah.
Great. I feel like I got completely different things out of it this time around reading it the second time. So I'm excited to discuss that. Mm-hmm. And, if you guys were possibly here for our first memoir nonfic episode where we covered Mark Hoppus's book, Fahrenheit 182, then you kind of know what the format is a little bit different, obviously. We're not going to give you a play-by-play. We're not going to do a 5-sentence summary or anything like that because memoirs are just a different layout. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, was it well written? Do we feel like this was a cash grab or what, Was this actually something that contributed that we really enjoyed reading? But we will start off still with our spoiler-free star and spice rating, and then who we would recommend it for. So we still will make sure that you guys have that info, right in the first 15-ish minutes, and then we'll give you the spoiler warning still will be coming.
Yeah, and when it comes to memoirs, I mean, we're not going through it in the trenches like you do in the memoirs. That's what I gleaned from doing our first covering of the Blink-182 memoir, because there's so much that happens in it. It's not like, obviously, reading a fantasy novel where if we say a major plot point, it's going to ruin it, and some people wouldn't even want to read it then. Memoirs, we don't go into like line by line. So not really. I feel like you could probably stick around, even if you haven't read it yet, to find out if you like it and if you'd be interested in it.
Because it's like, the general things that I always wonder when I pick up a memoir from like a, fairly well-known person, especially because this became a huge hit, right? Is like, we know that she survived the hike. We know that she's still
she's
writing
the one that
books.
wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's we know all the important information. So it's not like there's going to be a twistier attorney that you're just going to sit there and be like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah,
and now
especially
it's
this one. Yeah, this one, it's more about the journey that you would want to read. Yeah, like literally. Like this literally, so anything that we say here shouldn't be a spoiler, but kind of go into it, knowing that you're going to get some information, but not all of it. It's not, we're not a 350-page podcast right here. So that's the book.
I think it's more so like, hey, are you looking to try out memoirs and you're wanting to see if you might enjoy this one? Find out. Or like, did you skip over it maybe because you thought it was overhyped or something? Find out what we think about it and then maybe proceed from there,
Yeah.
And we'll talk about like, the audiobook adaptation, the movie adaptation, all that kind of good stuff to see if it's worth going into the whole, I don't know, what you call it when it's not fiction. Lore. Is it still lore?
We'll definitely say book versus movie.
For sure.
We'll do that for sure. Because I definitely have opinions now rewatching the movie. So.
Me too. For sure. I just watched it a few days ago and I definitely have thoughts. So before we get into all that, we just wanted to say thank you so much for being here.
Dude, thank you guys so much for being here, taking time out of your day and your book to come and hang out with us. We love you guys, and thank you. We appreciate it. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe if you aren't yet, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts, including YouTube. Like I mentioned, we're hanging out there live and in action. I don't know. Something like that. We're at Besties in the Books podcast everywhere, including TikTok and Instagram. So come and hang out there. And if you want to join our fun little virtual antisocial social book club, come check us out on Fable at Besties in the Book Club. We got our monthly book club picks when we do these little buddy reads. We put them up there. We're just having a good old time. So come read with us.
We just read Enchantra. I thought it'd be funny to start this episode off with a favor fail, but like Outdoorsy edition.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because literally the subject matter leads us there. So
let's do it. I got him.
Okay, I'm
let's
excited.
Go, Liz. You go first.
Well, okay. No. So my fail is so dumb, but it like literally is the one thing that like sticks out in my mind forever. Like it's never, and it has a little nugget of like millennial nostalgia in there too. So I was like, okay. So remember when the Adidas track pants were like literally so popular that everyone was wearing them, even if you didn't play sports. Like just everyone was wearing them.
Yeah, Sporty Spice. Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Do you remember the jacket? With the navy blue. I had the navy blue with the white stripes down the arms, and then I had lime green logo. Loved it. It's like almost windbreaker material.
Yeah.
Loved that thing. Oh my god.
Material. Yeah. Like every time you walk anywhere. Yeah.
I want that again. Okay, go ahead.
I do not want that again. Just to let the record state. Maybe the pants I could do. I just watched Bring It On last night. Okay, and the night before. Yeah. So maybe the pants, but the jacket is too far.
It's very loud.
Yeah. Everyone can hear you coming from a mile away. Okay. Literally. Okay.
It also sounds like you're scarred from them, so let's hear it.
I'm not scarred from them. I'm not. Okay, so we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. So, like, you know, I had asked my parents for this, like, these Adidas track pants, right? And it was, like, this big deal that they're not the knockoff ones. They're the real ones. Like, I was so excited to get them. You know, I wore them all the time. Loved them. This is back when I also played basketball. So I was kind of, like, a little bit sporty. So it was, like, I could pull them off. And so my dad is a big camper, hiker, fisherman, outdoorsman. He always has been. And so as kids, he would take my sister and I to do all these things often. And so we were on one of our summer camping trips, and we were going on our little hike or whatever to go find some fishing spots. And I slipped on like a bank of rocks and slid and put a huge hole in my Adidas track pants.
Aww. And they're so slippery too. They're in no traction. You're just going down the mountain.
Luckily, I was fine. It wasn't like a cliff situation. Otherwise, I would have been just like long gone. No, it was just devastating. And to this day, I must have been like, 12, 13, maybe. Like, I was still in middle school, so probably 12. And to this day, that stands out in my mind as like this tragedy that like I've never quite gotten over. Maybe I do need to buy myself a new pair of track pants.
It's a healing.
It's a healing thing. Okay, I'll look them up after this. They're probably $1 million now. Great.
I don't know. Now because like leisure wear is so popular, you know, they probably have like the new version or whatever. It's probably fine.
I'll check.
I mean, if you want those specific ones, good luck. But you know, you might have to take
vintage,
the new and improved.
No, it's fine. I could just go to the Adidas website and see what they have there. But okay, I'll report back about this later.
Great.
So that was the fail that just like sticks out of my mind. I'm sure there's a million more of them, but I've never quite gotten over that. Okay.
Yeah, we'll read another wilderness book and make it another favorite fail. To be continued.
My fave, I have a lot of outdoorsy faves from over the years, just because of the fact that, I did so many fun outdoor things with my family. However, I feel like we needed to mention, just in case if you weren't going to mention it, or maybe you were, I don't know, but Ashley and me and two of our other friends took a camping out of the car road trip from Bakersfield all the way out to Colorado and back when I wasn't even 21 yet. I remember that.
Nope.
So
just me. Doing getting, some supplies occasionally.
In the places we could, I remember we definitely camped in a couple dry counties where it's like there wasn't anything Utah, to be had. So. But that for sure stands out in my mind as one of the best outdoorsy experiences I've ever had, for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, just like driving through Vegas with you guys in the middle of the night and like just driving around trying to find good places to camp and all these beautiful like mountainy areas and like going to Bryce Canyon and hiking that. And like, it was just such a... It was like a carefree. There's nothing more carefree than going on a trip like that, like when you're that age, because your responsibilities are so few.
Yeah. Like we don't have like quote unquote real jobs yet.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have real responsibilities yet. And it's just about you and the road, man, and your gaggle of friends.
Yep.
Agreed.
It was so good. I mean, I think about it now, like literally, knock on wood, I've only ever been in one major car accident, and it happened like right before we were meant to leave. I was fine. Like, luckily everyone involved was fine. It was just like a stupid thing. But my car, I drove like a little Kia at the time, was completely 100% totaled. Okay. Well, I had to figure out a way to get rid of it. So I remember I literally was able to like drive this tin can clickety clackety like up to my apartment because the accident happened like right down the street. I literally just like parked it in like the end parking lot of my apartment complex and then just like left and went on this camping trip for like a week and a half or whatever. Like no cares in the world. It's fine. You know,
that's a problem for me in 2 weeks. Not now.
Exactly. Yep. I remember my landlord called me when we were gone. You know, we had like the tiny like Nokia cell phones with no internet on them, you know. That's another thing, is it was just like you were actually disconnected, so you had to be very present with the people you were with because there wasn't other options. And I remember they called me on my cell phone when I finally got service, and they were like, hey, you have to do something about this like totaled car you just left here. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in Colorado right now. I'll take care of it when I get back.
Yeah.
It's just that level of carefreeness is hard to replicate. You know what I mean? Like once you get older.
Yeah.
So I have very, very many good memories from that trip.
I think it's that carefree and the responsibilities plus technology. You know, we talk about having just little Nokia phones. You could check in, but we're not all glued to our phones. And also just my mom has actually talked about this before, is just like how accessible everybody is all the time. Like that was such an adjustment, especially for my mom's generation, that like was, well, if I don't answer my phone, leave a message, I'll get around to it. Now it's like you're available all the time unless you set those boundaries. Totally. So having that road trip where like that doesn't even exist yet and you're just going. I mean, we're probably using maps and MapQuest at that point, like literal maps. I think one of our guys had like a old school TomTom or something we used.
I don't remember. I remember we had paper atlases. This is what I remember. Yeah. We had paper atlases and maps because we didn't have any other, like you couldn't pull up a map on your phone or anything like that. Yeah. I don't think they had anything because I remember at one point we got lost and we had to pull over and call one of our friends so that they could like go on Google and look up directions and give them to us verbally over the phone.
Oh, yes.
So... Hey.
Yeah, and it was a little sedan, one of our friends' cars, and we were packed to the gills, like with wood and everything for campfires. Yeah. And so we had a rule that it was whoever's driving, you have to have the passenger has to stay awake. You know, the back people can sleep because we were driving throughout the middle of the night and everything. It was awesome. And that was so fun too, because we're just going through different CDs. And I remember, so I'll just continue on as a fave outdoorsy for me too, because of course that's what I was going to talk about. Lots of outdoorsy things that I loved, but that road trip especially. Bryce Canyon to this day, nothing has been more beautiful to my eyes than that. And I've seen a lot of beautiful things. So like, to me, I'm Bryce Canyon over the Grand Canyon. You know, you guys,
I've still never been to the Grand Canyon. Trips.
It's fine, like it's grand, but like the beauty of the colors in Bryce Canyon, it's a little bit easier to, you know, of like different hike levels and stuff. Where the Grand Canyon, you kind of just go to the rim and you're like, cool, unless you're going to do like this really strenuous activity. Yeah. So a little bit more difficult. But I don't know. I'm like, there's prettier things. But hey, so that was probably my favorite part. Visually wise, but yeah, just I remember when we were driving through like the forever, might have been at some point in Arizona, and I was like, we are gonna remember this for the rest of our lives. Like we will never have another. I mean, maybe we will, but like theoretically, this could be like the only time ever in our lives that we have this moment, and that is a time in my life where, you know, Andy in the office says, "I wish that we knew the good old days when we were in them." That I knew. Like I was purposely very present for the whole thing. Not that there's some things I didn't. I'm sure I forgot multiple things. I don't remember phoning a friend for maps. But like in general, like I knew this is a sacred moment for sure. Beautiful, beautiful time. And we only kind of roughly mapped out what we were going to do, and we had wiggle room, which I think is the way to do it. Yeah, you know, I agree. It's like a balance. Yeah.
Well,
like
now it's just different anyways, because no matter where you are, you're going to be connected most likely in some way, right? It's like if something happens, like you're probably close enough to figure out how to get to a hotel or close enough to call someone or go on the internet or maybe even call an Uber or like it's a different level of winging it that now would just be kind of impossible to do.
Yeah.
And so
unless you just don't have service and then
you'll probably be back into service in a little bit anyways. You know what I mean? It's like, we're not going to, you know, we weren't in like a crazy, like Alaskan wilderness. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were camping, but it wasn't like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It was more like, oh, we're setting up this tent now in the middle of the night. Oops. Bears around, but oh well. Yeah. Hey, we're fine. It's definitely more of an adventurous feeling.
Yeah.
For sure.
And also just like a carefreeness that comes from being young and like unconcerned about probably some things you should be concerned about.
Yeah. For sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah.
Like the bear
Yeah.
situation. Like, did any of us have any bear spray? Like, I don't even know. I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next story.
Oh, no.
My bear encounter.
Okay.
Good segue.
Okay.
Good segue. So yes, I did grow up also, Liz and I grew up at the base of the Sierras. So
where this book begins.
Yeah, where this book begins. So very nostalgic. And it was really cool to see read about all the different places. And I'm like, hey, I know that place. Hey, I know that place. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, our family also was super into camping and things like backpacking. So that was like a huge bonding thing me and my family would do. And twas the summer of, I think I was in 8th grade ish, and one of the biggest backpacking trips that we were going to do was like 7 or 8 days in Mammoth Lakes. And shout out to Mammoth, what's up? I got to go there in a few weeks. I'm so excited.
Oh,
so yeah, we were planning this big backpacking trip, and for backpacking, you need a condition for it and everything. It's pretty intense. We're out in the wilderness. There's no plumbing. There's nothing. So, and it's my family there's 7 of us, including my parents, but I think my little sister didn't go because she would have been really young. So she might have stayed with the grandparent. And so it was 4 plus my sister's boyfriend at the time. So there was 7 of us. Okay. Anyways, so let's fast forward. It's grueling. We do 8 miles a day. We're all loving it. We're having a blast. It's a day 4 into our trek into Mammoth Lakes. And at the time, bears were starting to become a problem, but we were still not having mandatory bear boxes, which bear boxes, obviously, they're more bear safe. They will, protect your food.
Yeah.
So back then, we were still being able to tandem tie them to the trees to try to keep bears out. Well, day 4 didn't work. So we wake up in the middle of the night. My mom is like, Ashley, don't freak out. Instantly makes me freak out. My sister has a headlamp on and is putting on her hiking boots because there's a bear at the campsite, and she turns to us and says, all I got to do is outrun you guys. Like, thanks, sis. She's a high schooler. What are you going to do? That's what they do. So I'm scared, but also it's going to be fine. But I'm definitely oh my gosh, shaking. Yeah. And it's going to be fine. So we can hear him climb the tree, take his nail and just flick the rope. It drops on the ground, and he just had his Yogi Bear feast and ate all of our food. Oh my gosh. And so what it was funny, it was very it's one of a fave story of mine now because obviously you survive, you live it. It's funny and in the moment you're so freaked out. My dad, I remember 20 minutes into us just listening to this bear eat all of our food, and he finally left, but there was a stream nearby. So we're don't get out of the tent, Dad. He's I gotta go to the bathroom. So we're don't go. He's probably just getting a drink or something. So he starts getting out to go, runs back in. He's not going in. And my sister's boyfriend and my brother were in another tent. So that was kind of funny. We were talking, is he still there? Yep, he's still there. You guys good? We're good. So anyway, he eventually left, and we all went to sleep to deal with it tomorrow. Because that's tomorrow's problem. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the campsite was trashed. Oh. And he had the bear had taken a toothbrush and dipped it into one of those powders that you eat on the trail and was eating it like that. Dude, it was crazy. We had nothing but maybe a couple. We brought a lot of these peanut butter individual packs. We had a couple of those. So what did we have to do that day with no food? We had to walk the 4 days back into town, to our car, because we had nothing. We had fishing poles, but what are the chances you're going to catch enough fish to feed 7 people? Dude, it was crazy. That was crazy. Very grueling, but you know what? Made me stronger for it, for sure. And look at here. I'm sitting here telling the story. I got to tell it. So it's a fail in that it was definitely a time that, like I said, canisters were coming onto the scene for backpackers in that area. The bear problem is really bad there, especially now. So, they never made that mistake again. So canisters from then on out.
Yeah. Yikes.
Me and my family have a lot of bear stories, so I'll save it for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, my husband loves to tell a bear story about how when he was a kid, he and I don't know if it was both of his parents or just his dad, had taken him and his sister camping, and a bear came into their campsite, and his dad grabbed his sister and ran away, and Kanan was just there by him. So,
Great. Oh, geez.
everyone was obviously fine, but he loves to tell that story, like about how he got left behind. I'm sure it wasn't as dramatic as it sounds.
Yeah. But to a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we get into just our spoiler-free... Well, I have a question for you before we get into our spoiler-free reviews, because
All right.
I saw this on Bookstagram actually yesterday, and it kind of made me start thinking about it a little bit. Do you think that because memoirs are the, recounting of real people's lives, that we should be reviewing them at all?
Yes, because we're not reviewing whether their life is worthy or not necessarily.
2-star life. Get out of here.
Yeah, terrible. Bye. We're a lot of times reviewing this as like, was it good quality?
Yeah.
Like not the life, but the book itself, you know?
Totally.
Because you could have a awesome story and not know how to write it, you know? Or, sometimes people's memoirs, like you say, maybe they don't need to have it out there.
Yeah.
But hey.
I agree with
So
you. I was
I
just kind
think
of
it's
curious to hear your take. Obviously, I know you agree with it because we're like filming this episode. Otherwise, you'd be like, I have problems with the ethics of this.
Yeah.
But I agree with you too on there are many different ways to rate a book. And, we're talking about writing quality, writing style, the story in general. Like if we feel like it was worth telling, or is it just, to sell more books? And how we found it relatable to us. And so, I agree. But someone was just talking about it yesterday, and so I thought it brought up an interesting point. Like, how do we rate people's real life stories about their lives? Well, this is how.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Yeah. Come on. I think sometimes we can overthink things a little bit.
A little bit. I agree.
So my personal opinion.
Also, we're not going around rating people's lives or lived experiences or stories that didn't choose to publicly write and publish them.
Yeah.
So there's also that.
Yeah. We're allowed to critique things. Because then in that argument, you can say, well, this fantasy story came from their heart and they really believe in it. It's like, it's a slippery slope here.
Yeah.
So we're not saying their life is not worth living if we're giving a poor review. Most of the times it's like, what was this mess? Like, why did a mess as in writing quality?
Yeah, exactly.
Not them as a person. So... Yeah.
Or maybe them as a person isn't good too, but that's different.
Maybe they're a bad person. So I don't know. Yeah, we'll say it. So hey.
So why don't you just give your spoiler-free star rating and who you'd recommend the book for?
Yeah. So I would give this memoir a 5-star against other memoirs that I've also read and enjoyed. While for me personally, it wasn't profound. Just for me, I could see how it could be for other people. And I personally would definitely reread this again. It feels like what would have the makings of a comfort read for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then who it would be good for. Let's see. A lot of people looking into self-discovery, people that like outdoors things and maybe don't and want to glean some information on that. People that like journey books of self-discovery.
Yeah.
Totally.
I agree with you. If you enjoy memoirs in general, I would say specifically journey books or like books of, a metaphorical and physical journey, right? Because I feel like oftentimes like they're telling that story, but using it as a literary device to work through whatever, kind of cause them to go on this journey in the first place, right? Yeah. So if that's kind of your thing, I think that you'd really enjoy it. I think this would be a great memoir for people looking to get into memoir because it's not very long and it's very engaging. Yeah. So, if you're like, I've never tried one before, like, I wonder what I would think about it. I feel like this might be a good one.
Yeah. And
to get started.
I also give credit to Miss Cheryl for doing flashbacks and jumping timelines without confusing me. because
I put that here too.
yeah,
I literally did.
That has been done wrong in a lot of memoirs that I've read.
Yeah.
This one is exactly what I want. So I think it's because she's following the timeline of her trail journey and doing the flashbacks of kind of what led her there, but still in a way that makes sense, you know?
Yes.
So,
I
well done.
completely agree. I also rated it 5 stars. You know, when I read this the first time, like I said previously, just kind of touched on, and I'll talk more about once we get in kind of the details of the story. You know, I really enjoyed it for the kind of more surface level physical journey of just wanting to read about a woman hiking this very long, you know, 1,200 mile or whatever hike by herself, and how fascinating that was to me as a, let's say, 25-year-old who had not done anything like that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting, like people who do these amazing things, you know?
Yeah.
Now, as a 36, soon to be 37-year-old, I definitely got a lot more out of the metaphorical journey. And I feel like I rated it 5 stars because I feel like there's just a lot of different things that different people can get out of it.
Yeah.
Whether it's surface level entertainment or whether you resonate with the subject matter on a very personal level. If you need something that's a little bit like, you know, I could say even like motivational or like quote unquote like self-helpy, but that is not at all a self-help book.
Yeah.
I feel like I appreciated it for that aspect as well. So yeah, definitely 5 stars. I would rate it technically for a memoir a 1 spice because there are some scenes in there.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that, but it was nothing that was like too, in my opinion, like over the top or explicit. It was just real. It was what happened, and so she wanted to talk about it.
Definitely. Agreed.
So, okay, should we get into our more in-depth questions?
Let's do it. Hey, boo-boo, picnic basket. I'm going to take your spoilers and share them. Let's go. That's my spoiler sound.
So the first thing that I put on here was what Ashley had mentioned before. What was the structure of the memoir? So same. It was her hike in chronological order.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're literally on this journey with her on, you know, from beginning to end, start to finish of the trail, where she will be walking along, and as you do when you've been alone and haven't seen another human being in 3 or 4 or 5 days or a week or whatever, you have all these inner thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And so it would bring back memories or, you know, something would trigger a thought, and then she would go back in time and tell that story.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I felt like it was really organic and done in a way that wasn't confusing and that flowed well.
Exactly. Yeah, so I really
agree
enjoyed
with
that.
you. I definitely have read a lot of memoirs, but when I'm just like confused about what's happening when, and it's hard to put 2 and 2 together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my one sentence of what this book is actually about. So this book is about a young woman, Cheryl, devastated by her mother's sudden and untimely death from cancer, processing her grief and allowing herself to heal through the experience of hiking 1,200 miles alone on the Pacific Crest Trail from, you know, kind of around Tehachapi, California to the border of California and Washington. Over the course of what, approximately 3 months?
Oregon and Washington, but yeah.
Oregon and Washington. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it took about 3 months or so. But yeah, so that's what this book is about. If you guys, you know, haven't seen the movie or weren't sucked into all the hype from 15 years ago or whatever, 10 years ago. Just a little bit about Cheryl Strayed. So the author, if you guys don't know, and I had to look up a couple things too, because I was kind of curious. Okay, so she's written 3 books, and I think she has kind of like a 4th book that's more of like a kind of coffee table book or something like that. But so she wrote Wild. That's obviously New York Times bestseller, Oscar nominated movie came from it. It does get a 4.07 on Goodreads, so it seems like it's fairly well liked. Her debut novel, Torch, which came out in 2012, gets a much lower rating on Goodreads. It's a 3.63. Technically, it's fiction, but a lot of people say that it's very, very, very similar to her life and what she talks about in Wild. So I don't know if maybe it's because it's repetitive or I'm not really sure. I haven't read it. but she has that book as well. Then she has her most popular book, which is called Tiny Beautiful Things, which I am actually listening to right now on Libby.
Nice.
I was able to get it like immediately, and I'm like 25% of the way in. It came highly recommended to me by a lot of different people, but it's taken me this long to read it. I actually have the physical copy right here as well.
Oh, nice.
That was sitting in my bookshelf, but I'm choosing to listen to it because Tiny Beautiful Things started off as a print advice column. So most people who would write in to have her respond to their, they would just ask her questions, she would respond anonymously, didn't realize that it was Cheryl Strayed who was doing it.
Oh.
So I thought that was kind of fascinating. So Tiny Beautiful Things started off as an advice column. Then it turned into a very popular podcast, which I didn't realize.
Yeah.
And then they turned it into a TV show on Hulu, which I actually have watched several episodes of, but need to finish still.
Wow.
So I've been really enjoying Tiny Beautiful Things. And that one gets a 4.15 average on Goodreads.
Oh.
So, yeah. So
Very
that's
cool.
just a little bit about her works. If you guys
Yeah.
want to check out anything else from her. And like I said, I've been thoroughly enjoying just kind of like the, people just write in with their miscellaneous problems. And then I feel like, just as she kind of showed us in Wild, she has that very like kind of more deep, eloquent way of like looking at things. And it comes through in her advice column as well, which I appreciate.
She does it without being pretentious, too.
Yeah. 100%.
Is I think what makes it so easy to digest and relatable as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Had you ever heard of Cheryl Strayed or like any of her stuff like before Wild came out?
Nope.
Yeah, me neither. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all in all, how would you say that this memoir made you feel? And did you connect with it on like a personal level at all?
So I do feel, I'm a sucker for nostalgia over here, if you can't tell. So yeah, just hearing about the different like stops and places she was walking through that I'm like, oh, I've literally been there was super cool. And I'm always super curious about people's experience on the Pacific Crest Trail, because growing up as a full-on Californian, it comes up. Like I know people that have done the Pacific Crest Trail, and that is crazy. It's wild to me, if you will. It's amazing. So getting another glimpse into that, I eat that up. So I loved that. It made me feel like connected, like literally to the world as I've known it as far as nature goes. And then
totally.
as far as, like I was saying, I might not connect with her on her personal experiences very much. As you guys saw in the books that made us college, I eat that up. Like I love finding out other people's plights, the goods, the bads, the uglies, and the difficulties and the challenges that they've had, because it just helps us to see humans as the multifaceted beings that they are. Mm-hmm. So I connected with it in that way, that I like hearing about other people's stories. So what about you?
Totally. The fact that she starts hiking right around where my dad used to live, it was really cool. And then, especially growing up where we grew up, it's like we may not have had like a very good understanding of what the Pacific Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, say that 5 times fast, was when we were kids growing up, but we were very, very aware of, hikers, people passing through all the time, like where a lot of the popular trails were. We lived in an extremely rural area, and, it wouldn't be unusual to see people hiking through all the time. So I feel like, it was very much like in our personal lives from a really young age. So I did like connecting with that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And now living in the Pacific Northwest, seeing her transition from that desert, dry Southern California, where we're from kind of situation, and then end up where I am now in the rain and, redwoods and firs and all that kind of stuff was pretty cool. I was like, look at that. I've like lived in both places. Like, it's pretty neat. Mm-hmm. So I just put here, when I was younger, I connected more with her harrowing journey and the thought that maybe someday I'd do something like that. So, I am not a backpacker, so not that, but like, just doing hard things, right? I feel like is a theme for sure, and figuring out who you are. She does this when she's in, her early to mid 20s as well. Yeah. And then now I connected much more with the metaphorical journey and had a much deeper understanding of what her relationship with her mom was like. I feel like that was a huge piece of this book for me this second time around, because the first time I read this book, I didn't really have much of a close relationship with my mom. Yeah. So I wasn't really able to relate to a lot of this stuff. The second time around, I'm a lot closer with my mom. I'm also a lot older, so I feel like I can like understand her on a lot of different levels better. And it just made me so grateful that like we're able to have that time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Definitely. I think that really just resonated with me, because she does talk about like, there's a quote here that I put that really resonated with me where, she's struggling with, her mom died when she was, 45? Yeah. I think. Super young.
That's so young.
And when Cheryl herself was 22. And so she said, quote, "I didn't get to grow up and pull away from her and bitch about her with my friends and confront her about the things I wish she'd done differently, and then get older and understand that she had done the best she could and realize that what she had done was pretty damn good and take her fully back into my arms again." Her death had obliterated that. And I feel like that is kind of, a lot of people are close with their mom their whole life. Like, that wasn't the story for me and my mom. It was very much like a journey to get there. Yeah. Very, very tumultuous journey to get there. And so reading quotes like that just really resonated with me this time around, because I was just so grateful that like I was able to go through that period of time where, we really didn't see eye to eye and didn't speak and didn't get each other, and then I was able to get older and have more perspective, and we were able to see each other a lot better. And just having the opportunity to do that, I feel like is such a gift.
Yeah, and feeling grateful for that. Yeah, definitely.
So I feel like that's what I got more so out of this time around.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Sure. Yeah.
So that's how it made me feel, grateful.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Do you think that Cheryl, as an author, so Cheryl Strayed, needed, or that her life or this journey warranted that she write a whole memoir about it?
Absolutely. Listen, men write about their walks all the time. Right?
It's true.
How many of these stories do we have by women, and what they've gone through? So yes, absolutely.
The more the merrier, because truly it's like, we have, how many outdoorsy stories do we have about men who run ultra marathons or men who do these crazy backpacking expeditions or go to Antarctica and like carry a sled, you know what I mean? It's like we have so many of those stories, and I do think that as far as like in the outdoor adventure memoir space, we could use a lot more women's stories. I agree.
Yeah. And especially hers, mid-90s, pre-internet, like, we all only know what we can know, but she even mentions, like, she doesn't have access to Google whatever she wants when it pops in her brain. So she's really heavily relying on salespeople, at REI to prepare her and whatever men's journals she can find about this trail. So yes, we do need these women's voices and women's perspectives on different fronts.
I mean, she didn't even have a cell phone on the trail, guys. Like, she had to hitchhike into town to use a payphone. I did really appreciate her examination of the differences and I guess you could just call it lived experiences of women going through these things, because it is a very different experience than a man going through these things. Or experiencing something like a 1,200-mile hike, by yourself. It's just a completely different thing with a whole different set of expectations, safety issues, politics. Like, it is very different.
Yeah, for sure.
So I like that she talked about a lot of those things, but didn't that's not what the book was about.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like she wanted it to be about that. She wanted it to be about her personal journey, but she didn't ignore those things either and act like they weren't important.
Right. Totally. Totally. And and she didn't create fear with it either. I don't know how to describe it yet. I mean, we'll talk about this when it comes to the movie, but the movie vibes were totally different to me than the book. So
I agree.
The movie, let's just say for now, until we get more hashed out, was more fear-based. And the book wasn't. It's acknowledgement of things, and it has a lot of symbolism throughout the book with that, and moving on and getting through it and getting through the moments. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, the best way to kind of talk about some of these points, I put a lot of quotes down. We'll have a specific quote section, but I feel like it's just the best way to explain is, she would rarely meet a woman on the trail, right? But she would meet tons of men all the time.
Yeah.
Some of them hiking alone, some of them hiking together in groups. And there was one, guy that she had met that she just says, he reminded me of all the golden boys I'd known in my life. Classically handsome and charmingly sure of his place at the very top of the heap. Confident that the world was his and that he was safe in it without ever having considered otherwise. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like, is she sitting there and dwelling on the fact that she feels unsafe? No, but she's showing that there's just a different level of sureness in yourself, in your place in the world, in your safety in the world when you can exist freely like that as he did, and I feel like that she just put it really beautifully.
I mean, we think about all these interactions that she has, and every one of them, it's just a natural instinct, so it doesn't feel pushy in any way. Like, it doesn't feel like she's pushing any kind of agenda. It's just a safety check that she has to do when she meets people. And any of us women especially will be doing that when we meet people, especially if you're out on the trail, is like, how safe do they look? What can I do if they aren't safe? I know, looks are deceiving. Taking stock of who's walking up to her. And that's something that these men on the trail don't aim to do. Or at the gas station, or anywhere that she meets them. They're just, oh, hey, lady, what's up?
Life.
Thought doesn't even go in their head. So it would be helpful for men to read this because it just gives a little bit of perspective on just it's just a natural thing that we as women have been taught to do and just do without even thinking about it until we're sitting here dissecting it and thinking about it,
Well, and something that oftentimes you have to do to save your own life. Right. Or to not that it's your fault if something happens to you. That's not what I'm trying to say. But lots of times it's like, we're taught these things, but also because lots of times it is very useful. It's like when she gets in the car with one of the guys who gives her a ride and he ends up being nice and fine and everything's good or whatever. But she tells him, just so you know, my husband's also hiking the trail and he's up just ahead of me. Mm-hmm. So basically, like, someone's going to be looking for me if I go missing, Yeah. It's like the things like that you're just covering your bases. Mm-hmm. But she works it in such a way that, exactly as you said, doesn't feel like an agenda. It's just a recounting of reality.
Yeah.
Someone's experience.
Definitely.
Do you feel like this memoir made you like Cheryl Strayed as a person? Like, did you feel like she is genuine? Would we want to be her friend after reading this? Like, how did you feel about her?
Yeah, I think she's genuine. Yeah. I would say another thing against the movie, she's not friendly, I don't find. And the book, she seems very friendly. So, and just like a little bit, like while she's dealing with all of this stuff, she's still like, I don't know, just she's not carefree, so that's not the right word.
In the book, she seems very open to the possibilities of like who she might meet and what she might experience, like a little bit more free-spirited, I think.
Yeah. Even though she's not, like, but she is, Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think what I appreciated about it was I don't necessarily think that she as a person was particularly likable. Mm-hmm. And that's fine because to me, that makes you a real well-rounded person as opposed to just someone who's writing the story trying to make themselves look good. Yeah. And so I like that she really talked about, I became addicted to heroin. I cheated on my husband. Like I did all of these wrong things, acknowledges that they were wrong things and they were, you know, destroying her life. But that at the end of the day, she's not regretful because they did bring her there to those experiences, which ultimately helped to heal her. So I really appreciated the candor, I guess you could say. And, just, it didn't feel like she was just pandering to us to try to get us to like her.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Which I really liked. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely felt like she was genuine.
Yeah.
How was the writing, and was it good quality, or was this like just a money grab?
I don't feel like it was a money grab. I liked the quality of writing. You know, like I said, the timeline that we talked about, it was easy to follow. I liked it. This is what I like in memoirs.
Well, it's a memoir written by a writer.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a huge difference, because I feel like most of the memoirs that we read now are not written by writers. They're written by famous people with, you know, ghostwriter or, you know, a co-writer or something like that. I think the difference was that this definitely had a very obvious literary flair that a lot of memoirs do not have, in my opinion.
Yeah. You have those like moments where she's quoting, you know, one of her favorite authors or books, and it feels natural and not forced. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy that. You know, you have different tones that set throughout the book and kind of pacing depending on what she's discussing. And it's very well done, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I felt like it just added another layer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It added another layer without me being like, oh, she's throwing in another Emily Dickinson quote. This is so weird. You know what I mean? It just all fit.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So, obviously, it gained like an insane amount of popularity. You know, when Reese Witherspoon's playing you, I think that, you know that you've made it at that point. When Oprah's endorsing your book, you know. So it's very popular. Do you understand why, and should it be as popular as it is?
Yes, and yes. Yeah. You know, more women's stories about things. We need to hear all the different perspectives of people and lives, plights.
Yep. I completely agree. I think that it deserves the hype. It deserves the accolades. I kind of almost wish she had more books, because I'm like, once I'm done with her 3 books or whatever, that's it. That's all I got. Write some more for us.
Yeah.
But I definitely understand why it's popular. Yeah. So, what was your favorite part?
My favorite funny part, literally not physically preparing for the PCT, as they call it, and overloading her pack so much that it was comical. As someone who, I mean, I haven't done the PCT, but we used to backpack, like I said, and we would, like, as kids, every weekend we'd be hiking with our packs and like slowly adding weight to get used to it, just for these little family week-long hikes we would do. So I can't imagine how rough of shape she was really in, you know? And with this giant, I can't even believe that she was able to stand up finally with it. And then did it for like a week, at least longer than that. It took her like 2 weeks, I think, to get to the place where she started downsizing.
Tearing it down, yeah.
Dude, that's nuts. So that was hilarious to me. So that was my favorite part. But in all seriousness, my favorite thing about the book, which surprised me, because me as someone who would be like, I would be so nervous about anybody that I met on the trail. I loved her trail camaraderie that was built. Because, like, for me, I'd be like, oh, you know, I'm going out there. I want to be alone. Like, everybody leave me alone. But, like, obviously you become, you know, deprived of that human contact and that bond. So everybody's so joyous when they see each other. And the way they, like, leapfrogged, you know, back and forth. And it was very, not nostalgic, but it was my brother-in-law's sister who just did the PCT just a couple years ago from Mexico to Canada. And she, you know, did a blog where we could see her travels and stuff. So, and she would have that. So it was kind of cool to see, like, reading about that, and then like knowing somebody that did have that, where it's like, oh, we're going into town, you know, they're all like in the back of someone's van and going to the store, and then, okay, we're parting ways, and then they come back together again. So it was just I wasn't expecting it to be so sweet. And I think it's also not just a literary tool, but like a literally like tool in life that like you kind of, these different relationships that she even just has for a day with people give her better perspective on herself and her own journey too.
We live in such an individualistic society right now that I think that it really challenges that idea. And I really liked that because, you know, it's like we're kind of taught to fear other people, especially strangers, right? Especially as women. And so I think this idea that, you know, you have to be cautious, you have to take care of yourself, but then also, like, you know, a lot of these people have their own stories to tell that are really valuable and interesting and are just there on their own journey, and coming together and being able to share a day or two can have such a meaningful, like, domino effect on your life.
Yeah.
So stepping out of that, like, comfort zone to try to get to know people that maybe in your, like, you know, quote unquote real everyday life you would never go up and talk to.
I do love that, even though we see her having to like think about the safety all, you know, naturally all the time, it wasn't until the end of her trail that she came up to like an actual possibly serious situation, you know? So it gives perspective too, is that like, yes, there's a lot of dangers in the world and we do need to be careful, especially as women. Unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. Most people are good people. So it's a good reminder for that. Totally. You know, like you said, a lot of people are on their own journeys and just trying to live their life. Most people have good intentions. So it's definitely a good reminder for that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so my favorite part was the quote unquote a bull in both directions. So, you know, she encounters like this big, like, scary bull on the trail, and it freaks her out, and then it runs off, and she doesn't realize which way it went. So she doesn't know which way she should go. And so I highlighted a quote because this is definitely my favorite part. So she's trying to figure out which direction she's going to go in. There were only two, and they were essentially the same. I could go back in the direction I had come from, or I could go forward in the direction I intended to go. The bull, I acknowledged grimly, could be in either direction, since I hadn't seen where he'd run once I closed my eyes. I could only choose between the bull that would take me back and the bull that would take me forward, and so I walked on. And I'm like, what an excellent use of metaphor in that moment. For the whole book itself. I was like, just for life in general, right? It's like, guys, on a daily basis, there's a bull in both directions, right? So it's like, which way are you going to choose to go? And I just loved that so much. Yeah,
that was beautifully said.
So what about your least favorite part?
I'm gonna go with horse death on this one.
Horse death. Sorry, that's not funny, but it was super sad, but it was just so specific. Horse death, yeah.
Oof, it was brutal. It was brutal.
It was super sad. I was glad that in the movie they toned that down a little bit, because I was like, I mean,
you don't really know what's happening in the movie.
Yeah.
Like,
in the book, it was very visual.
Yeah, like the mom's death, that was obviously horrible, but I knew that was coming, so it took like the steam out for me, just because I already knew. So, as horrible as it was, the horse death, really, I was crying in the club with that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. It was sad.
Yeah.
My least favorite part I just put was the gross dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was like, so much worse in the book, too.
Yeah.
Like, it was bad vibes in the movie, but, like, you don't go into, like, as creepy as it really was. And how they freaking fucked up her filter.
I know.
Oh my gosh, I'd be screaming at them. Like, dude. And they don't even apologize.
I know. Yeah, it's just, you know, I did appreciate, as you said before, that, you know, this only happened once the whole time she was out there. So for 3 months, hiking miles and miles and miles every day, hitchhiking into random towns, hiking on the side of the road sometimes, right? Like, this was the only creepo encounter that she had during the whole journey. So that is good. But I think the point is, it was the only creepo experience she had on the journey. However, there still was one.
Yeah.
And I think that's, it's important to remember that because it can't be like brushed under the rug.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And it doesn't even matter that she helped him out. Like, they literally would have passed out without her help. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how nice she was and polite. It doesn't matter that she left. He followed her.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was definitely my least favorite part. I just put gross dudes because can't you just let us live our lives?
Like, dude. Yeah, my gosh. Ugh.
So if you could then ask Cheryl one more thing that she didn't discuss in the book, what would it be?
Oh, I'm so superficial when it comes to something like a trip. I'd be like, oh, what was your favorite spot? Like, what was the prettiest place? Yeah. Because otherwise, I felt like everything was answered for me that I would have. So what about you? Anything specific?
I feel like the symbolism of her, like, walking up and touching the bridge of the gods, at the end of her trip was so, like, it felt very like she had reached something. It was final. It was like the completion of this super harrowing journey. My question to her would be, okay, yeah, I'm sure that was a really healing 3 months. And obviously you dug down into parts of yourself you didn't know existed in order to, excavate a lot of that trauma and try to process it. But what happened after that?
Yeah.
I feel like while I don't want to detract from the importance of that trip, it's like grief and addiction and things like that are very like long-term, issues that people typically will grapple with for a very long time. And so I would just be curious to find out, like, did she relapse with drugs? Like, what ended up happening? Like, did she still maybe get into therapy after this was over to deal with her mom's death? Did she have a better understanding of maybe other things she needed to do to work through it,
I think that would be a really helpful book if she ever wanted to write it, because that is a very important point, that we can have this journey and go on this self-healing discovery, but what do you do next? What was the next steps that got her from that bridge to fast forward? She says, a few years later, she got married to somebody and had her kids, decided to have kids, and felt like she could do all of that. So what happened then in those however many years? Like, what happened when she left the bridge? Because I don't know. It's like, was it really just, okay, everything's fine in life? No, there's just no way, what was the next steps? Where did you move to? What it chose you to in those directions? Like, how did your healing continue? Yeah. That is a good question.
Yeah. 'Cause I feel like, I'm sure that if you spend that much time with yourself, like that much solitary time with yourself, you're probably going to expedite a lot of the processes and grieving processes that a lot of people drag out for years and years and years and years because of, avoiding solitude and things like that. So I feel like it could definitely expedite the healing process, but there's still a lot that you'd have to deal with once you've extricated yourself from this like very isolated place, right? It's almost like being on the trail alone is like not really your quote unquote real life. So it's like, it's like taking a 3-month vacation and then coming back. Not that it was a vacation for her, but you know what I mean? Taking like a 3-month vacation from your day to day and then coming back and being like, well, okay, now I have to like assimilate back into society, but these things are still my reality. So, like, how would she deal with that, How do
you rebuild?
Yeah,
because you can't just go back to exactly how it was, or else you're going to fall into those same habits. That's just human nature. So, what did she do next? I would be very curious to hear that as well. So, come on, Cheryl, let's go. Rebuild time. Let's hear it.
So, we already talked about how the author helped us to reflect on our own life experiences to a degree. What about like world issues? Were there like any greater things that you felt like she was kind of discussing that you want to bring up?
I mean, like we've kind of talked about at this point, women's experiences with safety anywhere, but especially when she's on her own, in
the wilderness.
Or at the gas station or wherever.
That was a huge one for me, for sure. The feminist undertones. I mean, someone even asked her at one point, are you a feminist? And she says yes. the other one, what that I found really fascinating was when that journalist guy from the Hobo Times, pulls over and is inquiring because he doesn't see a whole lot of quote unquote lady hobos. And she says, well, that's because women can't just walk out on their lives and become hobos. They have kids to take care of. They have parents to take care of. They have things that they can't just leave. And I was like, that's a really good point, too. So I feel like she had a really great way, but she doesn't dwell on that, right? That's just something she says, and then you move on. So I feel like she just has a really great way of interweaving those very feminist themes into her story without making it just only about that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and how tragic it was that she quotes her mom once she got this cancer diagnosis and being upset, you know, she's just now starting to make decisions for her own life. She was married and pregnant at 19. And from then on, you know, she's doing the best she can for her kids. She's never done anything for herself. So she's going back to school and taking advantage of that college program that Cheryl gets accepted into, and she can take those free classes. It's amazing. And it's like, it's that unfairness that life can hand sometimes of like, you know, you waited, you felt like you did the right thing, and then you're still getting the rug swept out from under you.
Yeah.
So
because she
sad.
says something to the degree of like, I've never just been me.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I felt like that was a good scene in the movie. I felt like they did that scene in the movie well. That was one of the good ones.
Yeah.
So, did you know, before you read this book, did you know much about the PCT, and do you have any specific experiences with it that you would like to share, other than the ones that you've already mentioned?
I mean, yeah, just the ones that I've already mentioned. Yeah, I did know about it, obviously. I knew people that went on it. I'm sure we've done, because you can do partial hikes on it, where it's like, you know, just a trail. I'm sure we've done it, so that's cool. Did you notice the Kennedy Meadows was the Kern River?
Yeah,
she mentioned that. I was like, oh, freezing current. Described it exactly as I would. Burning ice cold, crazy torrent. Get out real quick. Not good.
Yeah, she's like, the current was so strong, it was only a foot deep, and I still couldn't walk through it or whatever. We're like, yeah, I mean, that's where we grew up, right on that.
Yep. Yeah. What about you?
I feel like, just everything that we've already covered. Just the fact that we're, you know, already, we grew up and existed around that kind of lifestyle all the time. So it was fun to read about it, you know?
Yeah.
Do you have any quotes you want to share that we haven't shared already?
Yeah. I loved this one because I can definitely relate to this. So this is a personal fave. I'm a free spirit who never had the balls to be free. So, yeah.
That definitely resonated with me as well.
Yeah.
I was a terrible believer in things, but I was also a terrible non-believer in things, which is me to a T.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a long one. What if I forgave myself? I thought, what if I forgave myself even though I'd done something I shouldn't have? What if I was a liar and a cheat and there was no excuse for what I'd done other than that because it was what I wanted and needed to do? What if I was sorry, but if I could go back in time, I wouldn't do anything differently than I had done? What if I'd actually wanted to F every one of those men? What if heroin taught me something? What if yes was the right answer instead of no? What if what made me do all those things everyone thought I shouldn't have done was what also got me here? What if I never redeemed? What if I already was? So kind of like what you talked about earlier.
Just understanding that even though her path so far hadn't been an ideal one, it led her to a new version of herself while also bringing her back to the self that she was before her mom died. And I think that that's important because she does talk about that. A world I thought would both make me into the woman I knew I could become and turn me back into the girl that I'd once been. So that's one of the quotes that I had written down. I think that that's what it's about. Is, you know, we've all done things that, you know, we could end up regretting, or things that we wish we would have done differently, or things that, you know, other society at large or other people that we know think are quote unquote bad. But that doesn't necessarily mean that in the grand scheme of your life, it makes you bad.
Yes. Like, it's like that. Like, she knows she's done bad things, but she's not bad.
Yeah.
Grief is a crazy thing. You know, and it's not to excuse what people do, and she's even saying it's no excuse what she's done, but it definitely has an effect on your brain that until you go through it, and each time you have to go through a grief, you're going to react differently. You can think you know exactly how you would handle the situation that she's in until you're in it, and you don't handle it that way. You know, there's been people in my life that, you know, we've lost, and how I handled it was completely different than what I thought I would do, you know? So I think that's another reason why this memoir can be so important and so helpful, is to show you, like, this is what grief can look like, you know? Like, full on avoidance. And go ahead.
Well, and also just like, it's very like empathy like it helps you have empathy for other people's plight, because it's like, you know, all day long we can preach that someone's doing something wrong or right, or this is what we would have done in that situation. It's like, unless you've gone through that, like, you have no idea how you would respond. And we really like it. I think books like this can really help us to, have empathy for other people's situations.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
My next one was, in my perception, the world wasn't a graph or a formula or an equation. It was a story, which is exactly how I see things too. And I was like, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. The last one that I have is, I knew that if I allowed fear to take over me, my journey was doomed. Fear, to a great extent, is born of a story we tell ourselves. And so I choose to tell myself a different story from the one women are told. I decided I was safe. I was strong. I was brave. Nothing could vanquish me. Yeah. And that felt like something that you definitely would need to tell yourself if you're going to take on a trek such as this, you know, because you're in it, you're doing it, you're going to power through. Because a lot of the things, you know, going back to us sitting in the tent and listening to the bear eat all of our food, you know, is a moment that we all had to kind of like, you know, we're huddled, we're all cozy together because it's cold anyways. And it's like, the bear doesn't want us. He wants the food. We can sit here and be scared that he's going to come into our nylon tent, but he's going to be happy as a clam and full and satisfied. So as long as you don't poke the bear, you're good. So, you know, hey, and that was the worst that happened. So with her, you know, she was always on the lookout for nature because that's just smart. But, you know, it takes her a long time to come across a bear, a long time to come across a rattlesnake, and she deals with it and moves on, you know?
Well, yeah, the second
like
part.
Life.
Yeah, well, that's why I think it's a metaphor for life. Like, the second part of that quote that I wrote down was, I simply did not let myself become afraid. Fear begets fear, power begets power begets power. I willed myself to beget power, and it wasn't long before I actually wasn't afraid. I was working too hard to be afraid. And so, I mean, that's just something that you could apply, obviously, if you're going through a crazy journey like this, but you could also just apply to your everyday life and its challenges depending on where you're at, you know? I have a few more quotes. We've already, like, said a few, but I had a lot from this book, so I really pared it down. I had to pare it down. Yeah. Alone had always felt like an actual place to me, as if it weren't a state of being, but rather a room where I could retreat to be who I really was. That resonated with me because I feel like that's exactly how I feel. Yeah. That was, and no one had said it before in like such an eloquent way.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say about them saying it.
Yep. As I stood there gazing at Elk Lake, it occurred to me for the first time that growing up poor had come in handy. I probably wouldn't have been fearless enough to go on such a trip with so little money if I hadn't grown up without it. I wouldn't have been here 80-some days out on the PCT, broke, but okay, getting to do what I wanted to do, even though a reasonable person would have said I couldn't afford to do it. Yeah. So I love that because I'm like, it's kind of true. It's almost like, it reminded me a lot of like when I started my business, like I didn't know, this was like 9 years ago now, and I was just like very naive to a lot of stuff. So I just did it, not realizing that like I probably didn't have like the knowledge or financial means or anything really to do it, but I just did it anyways. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I loved that perspective. And then let's see. Oh, I liked this one because this kind of ties back around to, you know, obviously the theme of our podcast. I loved books in my regular pre-PCT life, but on the trail, they'd taken on even greater meaning. They were the world I could lose myself in when the one I was actually in became too lonely or harsh or difficult to bear. Yeah. So. Yeah. Here
There
we
you
all
go.
are, probably for
Yeah.
very similar reasons, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about the audiobook. Did you listen to any of the audiobook, or did you read it all with your eyes?
Yeah, I bounced back and forth between both versions, ebook and audiobook.
Same.
So
What did you think?
I did not
I
like the
struggled.
narrator.
I didn't like.
Okay,
I didn't like
thank
it
you.
either.
Something about the narrator's voice. I
She
didn't like it.
sounded really like, not
Old?
to be ageist, but she sounded old. Like literally. Okay, and I don't have an issue with the narrator sounding old, except for she was supposed to be like 25.
Yes, I think that's what it was. It was
Yeah.
a disconnect for sure. But I didn't
Huge.
look at when this audiobook was, narrated. We've come a long way with audiobooks. We can all agree
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah. Well, it's like I'm even listening to, like, as I was talking to you guys about Tiny Beautiful Things, which is her other book, and she narrates it herself. So I think maybe this was like before the times of like when we really cared about that kind of stuff, or
Yeah.
so they thought, you know?
Yeah.
So the early days.
Yeah, like they talked about at Romantasy BookCon, the audiobook panel of narrators were talking about what shift it's been between the monotone voices. And it wasn't that she was monotone, it didn't match. It just didn't match her tone.
Yeah.
With reading it, it just sounded much older than the actual person is
Character,
experiencing.
yeah.
And it's like a certain twang that she had that didn't like make sense either. So
I agree.
yeah, maybe
I
like
agree.
too phonetic, less casual, which is how it reads more casual, even though it's eloquent. I don't know. So
Yeah, it just,
okay.
I think what you said makes sense. It just didn't match. Like the voice didn't match
Yeah.
the tone or the character at all, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So was it so bad that I turned it off? No, it was fine, but it was like, it could have been a lot better.
Yeah.
What did you think of the movie?
Well, so I definitely saw it when it first came out in theaters, whatever that year was. And I remember seeing it with my husband and we loved it. It was great, and that was that. I should have read the book. Watching it after finishing the book, I was like, oh, they've messed everything up, as they do, right? And like I mentioned briefly, the tone just felt so different to me. It was just more, not that there wasn't context in here that was depressing. Like she went through a lot of horrible things and the death of her mother was really horrible, but it just felt like even her PCT trail life, she was just a different person than how I read it and how I perceived her. And so it made it less enjoyable as a movie for me. I was constantly, I told my husband, I was like, tell me if I'm being annoying because he was watching it with me. I was saying all the things wrong. Like that didn't happen in that order. That wasn't, there's like 3 people that she met, not just the one, So it just kind of took out a lot of the things that I enjoyed about the movie. So the camaraderie, you didn't really feel that in the movie. At least I didn't. And I don't know. It villainized her life a little bit more from my perception, even though, she has reason to be villainized in a way, but I didn't like it.
Yeah. I feel like, I watched it also years ago. I didn't really remember a whole lot about it. So I watched it, my notes on it were basically like, as much as I love Reese Witherspoon, I don't feel like she was the right person for that role. And I feel like that was kind of part of the problem. Like, because I feel like when we think of, like, Reese Witherspoon, we think of more of a bubbly personality, even if she's playing a serious role. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I feel like it just didn't translate well, because I feel like she was almost like overcompensating for that by being too dark,
too serious and too dark,
too serious.
Yes. Yeah.
And so then it kind of like overdid it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like aesthetically, I feel like she looked the part.
Yeah,
like she did a good job. I just feel like they could have found someone maybe different to do it, that would have been a little bit more aligned with Cheryl's in real life personality, maybe. So I had issues with that.
Well, that's what's hard, I think, as a casting director, because on paper she does fit it. Like as a in between, like make it a little bit more serious, like still you're bubbly, because she seemed bubbly with the people that she met in the book. Cheryl, she seemed to be an outgoing personality. I mean, to put yourself out there in all these situations that she does, she seems outgoing, other than this part of her this dark time that she had, that she pulled back a little bit, but she was still going out and meeting people constantly, you know, and hooking up with people and putting herself out there. So Reese Witherspoon kind of made her more reserved, I think, than we've read. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So
yeah.
I try so hard now that we're doing so many of these reads and watches to think of it as an extension of the book, but it's hard for me. Like, I wouldn't rewatch the movie now again, even though I was like so pumped to watch it again.
I don't feel like I would need to either. It wasn't that profound.
It breezed over
in
everything.
The movie. It breezed over everything in the movie version. I agree. I think that was the other part that I had an issue with the movie was like, obviously they're going to have to condense things. They're going to have to change some stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like it almost like it made it it was like too short. It was like almost like too short and too wrapped up. Like I feel like they could have made it a little bit more in depth and like really spent more time on some of the things that were important in the book. I feel like they didn't spend enough time. Like I would have been fine with a movie that was an hour longer if they would have been able to like honor her journey a little bit better.
This would be one of those good books that would be better as a miniseries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a close and complete, you know, 6 to 8 episode miniseries that does broken up in sections, because then you can get all the point across, you know?
Yeah, I just felt like a lot was lost, and it was just kind of turned into a very overly simplistic, like it's supposed to be this really complex, like examination of grief. Yeah. And I feel like it was really like reduced down to my mom died, so I'm going to hike and then I'll be better at the end. Yeah.
And then you can see like, it was like, I guess you don't have the context of what's going on, because my husband, who didn't read the book, is like, whoa, like why is heroin happening right now? You don't know, because she's not narrating obviously as these things are happening, these little flashbacks, so it was very artsy. So sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, oh, they're just trying to win an award, you know? So that's kind of what it felt like. So
yeah, I also, like, another just little side note that I had about it too, I didn't like her relationship that she had with her ex-husband in the movie. Right? It was completely different. It was him like yelling at her.
Yeah. It was so, and I'm like, that literally was reversed. The friend called her out at the home, and then she called for help to like intervene with her later on when she wasn't cleaning up, and that was like a last resort. And he was like super, like, I know you're like, it painted him in a bad light. On purpose, deliberately. They were like fighting and screaming in the car, and unless like she added more context and they got approval from her and that's how things happened, she left out of the book. That wasn't in the book. He was like super understanding and like helpful, and that was what was so difficult about reading that relationship, because she knew he was like such a good person and so forgiving, and like her knowing, as amazing as a person is, I know I can't be with them because I'm just going to hurt them. Like, that's a huge growth thing to happen that they took away from the movie completely.
Yeah, they kind of just made it seem like they were just unhappy and getting divorced. When in reality, in the book, it's like they were still best friends even after the divorce, because they got married so young. They just loved each other, and he was a very, very like kind, understanding person, despite everything that happened. And so I also didn't like that. I felt like that was kind of weird. Yeah. So,
a lot overall, of the subject matters that the flashbacks, you have no context. Like the little bit about the horse, like you don't know what's going on, like really. You don't know how you know, crazy it is. You don't know it was her mom's favorite horse. Like, so it's more of a highlight reel for people that read the book, but if you read the book, you're also gonna find all these things wrong with it that we did. So, who's it for? I don't know. But I liked it not reading the book. So hey,
yeah, there you go. Maybe that's who it's for. Like people who didn't read the book. Yeah, exactly.
Inspired by this book as opposed to like a true representation, because it doesn't go into all the heavy themes. Truly, it doesn't.
No. Yeah, I'd be curious. Like, I'm sure maybe there's some articles and stuff, but, like, if you could have a candid conversation with Cheryl Strayed, I'd be curious to hear her thoughts on how the movie turned out once all was said and done.
Yeah.
Like, if she felt like it was a accurate representation of her book, or, you know, if the artistic license that the people who made it went with was not exactly, like, her vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be curious to find that out.
For sure. Yeah.
So, obviously, we both like the book a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Book versus movie, book wins. Do-do-do.
Book wins. Okay, so let's just get into some reviews real quick. Okay. So first of all, on Goodreads, it gets an average of a 4.07, and there are about 844,000 ratings. I did include one funny low review because you guys know that I'm a sucker for a good one sentence, 1 star. Okay, so Julie gives it 1 star. She says, "Does she ever find the lost hiking boot? Sadly, I don't care." I was like, okay, yep. Okay, so, and on a more serious note, Christine gives it 1 star. "I didn't even bother finishing this book," so we know how I feel about that. "It started out with a lot of detail about her mother dying of cancer, which was upsetting. Then to help herself get over the sadness of the death of her mom, she cheats on her husband several times and becomes pretty seriously involved with a man who introduces her to heroin. All the time this is going on, she talks about what a great man her husband is and how much they love each other." Huh? She even legally changed her last name to Strayed after her divorce because she's strayed. Like, she's proud of it.
No, that's not what the reason was, though.
I know. "You hiking up the Pacific seaboard without learning how to hike properly is not a struggle. It's you being stupid." So the reason why I picked this review is because I feel like it missed the point.
Yeah.
It missed all the points. That's all I'll say about that. It's just kind of like the reason why she gives that realistic depiction of her downward spiraling.
Yeah.
And then talks so highly about her husband and then ex-husband is because that's what makes it complex. That's what makes us human and interesting. You know, it's like it's not black and white, and that's what makes it hard.
Yeah. I think it's easy to pass judgment on those critiques because, of course, those things she did were bad. But it waters down and it dilutes it instead of realizing that, like, these are all products of a young person, especially, who doesn't have full world experience and is grieving. And like she talks about, like, those were formative years where she's still, I'm no psychologist, clearly, but she has a bit of, like, an enmeshment, I think it's called, relationship with her mother. That is ripped off. I mean, to have, like, I was talking to Jeff about this, like, you have a fairly hippy-dippy mom who's all natural and, like, doing all those things that she thinks is good for her health and her family, and you're diagnosed with cancer and you're told you have a year to live and you die within a month. Like, what does that do to somebody who is enmeshed, a young person who is, like she said, yet to fully release herself from her mom and form herself as a person yet? And it's not, again, to excuse those things that she did, but we can learn to have some empathy. So to water it down in those ways and a judgmental way is harsh.
I would agree. So on that note, I'm going to read off a couple 5 stars. Broken Tune on Goodreads, 5 stars. "I love this book, not because it was an uber inspirational, amazing story. If it had been like that, I would not have spent much time on this book at all. What I loved about the story was that it was honest in its bluntness and that it did not glorify grief. Reading Cheryl's story was very easy to relate to, even though I did not walk the PCT, but then everyone deals with stuff differently." So she goes on, but I thought that was kind of a good summation.
Yeah, because there wasn't these, like, big, giant, profound, almost comical moments, that we see, cliche moments. It's a progression of kind of shedding those things from herself and forgiveness and all of those things, instead of, like, and I looked at the tree and everything was better. It's none of you can kind of think that that's what's going to happen when you're going into it, but that doesn't happen. So I appreciated that rawness.
Yeah, me too. It wasn't just like a book of weird, like new agey. And I was like meditating a lot on the trail and then came out a new person. You know, it's like it wasn't like that, thankfully.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I think you say it's Zhu Ting, but I'm not sure if that's right pronunciation. So 5 stars. This is going on my favorite shelf. I don't have much in common with Cheryl Strayed to make her story quote unquote relatable by definition to me, but nevertheless, it moved me tremendously. I'm amazed at how she can write struggles like her feet hurting, the intense heat without water, being broke on a hike, setting up camp, weather problems, her detours, and her long attempts to hitch rides without sounding repetitive or self-indulgent. Judging by some reviews I read, some people found her repetitive and self-indulgent, but I did not. For me, she kept things exciting and real in the moment, and she made me care for her as though her struggles on the trail were happening to her present tense, as I read them. I love the way she smoothly goes into flashbacks because that was what she was thinking at the time. She was thinking back. She felt like a friend in that way. And then she kind of goes on some more.
Yeah.
I liked all those things as well. Okay, so any final thoughts on Wild by Cheryl Strayed, or do you feel like we've covered it?
We did it. We did it.
We did it.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I feel good about it. So,
Cool.
You know, is there a memoir that you guys loved that you feel like we need to read for the podcast? Let us know.
Yeah. Let us
Yeah.
know. Any
I'd be
life-changing
curious.
memoirs? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll post a little box and see what you guys have to say.
Yeah, for sure.
So should we sign off with a smash or pass?
Let's do it, guys. Do. Smash or pass. Go time.
Mine's a choose your own adventure.
Ooh, for an adventure memoir. Great. Let's go.
I didn't do that on purpose. This is completely unrelated. I was trying to think of like outdoorsy stuff, and I was like, I don't know. I got nothing. But I did see something with him in it the other day, so it made me think of you. Okay. So as we've done this with Will Ferrell in the past, you must now do this with Matthew McConaughey. Choose a Matthew McConaughey.
They're all so good.
I know.
Well,
that's why I
not all of
was
them.
like, not all of them, but most. I mean, do you really
Matthew
lose? Could you really
McConaughey
lose?
driving the Lincoln.
Wait, okay, you have to choose. That's now your pick. Matthew
No,
McConaughey
because
from the
it
Lincoln
looks like he's rolling a
commercials.
yeah. Okay, the look, not the rolling what could be a booger, not that one, not that part, but like the rest of them. That's the one right there.
So much. No, I never saw that coming. Like, that's what I love about that. Is like, of all the Matthew McConaughey roles, I never expected you to be like, you know, those Lincoln commercials.
Yep.
Yep.
Those ones.
I mean,
that Matthew McConaughey.
We love it though. You know, we love it.
That was a great memoir, by the way, guys. Green Light.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Green Lights.
Green Lights.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You want to listen to Matthew McConaughey's voice?
Yeah. Out of
Okay.
all the Matthew McConaughey's, how about just his voice?
Yeah. I'll just listen to that all day long.
Yeah.
I have to give it to The Gentleman because he plays a mafia man.
I haven't seen that one yet.
He not only plays a mafia man, but gives the best my wife speech I think I've ever heard in a movie before. All right. What do you got for me?
Okay. So I'm going to say, hey, smash or pass, backpacking the Pacific Crest Trail.
Pass. I don't even want to backpack any trail.
Yeah, fair.
Literally, okay, there was a time in my life when I thought that it sounded like a good idea. Like, I dated a guy who, that was like one of his life's goals, was to like hike the PCT from Mexico all the way to Canada. And like my 21-year-old idyllic self that didn't yet know myself was like, maybe I'll graduate college and then we could just take 6 months off and just do it, you know? I am so glad that that did not occur. Now that I am 36 and I know myself so much better, I'm like, that is the last thing I would, if I took 6 months off of work, that is the last thing that I would do.
Yeah. So many other places you could go.
No. Yeah, so many. Like to your house, for example. Literally anywhere else. So that's a no for, that's a pass, hard pass for me. What about you?
You know, I don't know. It's not anywhere on my list of buckets or life goals whatsoever. But I'm like, it'd be pretty cool. Like
a good accomplishment.
Yeah, but then I realized Oh, yeah, you can't really have campfires. And guys, that's the best part of camping.
Yeah.
So I'm out. No, but like I do love backpacking, but I'm good at like a week. And it's been a long time since I did, so who knows if I can hack it. But it is like definitely something that I do like pushing myself in that way. Not when it comes to marathons and running, but I could do a good hike with a backpack. But am I the type... Realistically, I'm not the type of person who'd be able to do it. But I would if I started. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like I would make myself do it, but I wouldn't make myself do it to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, if you or me put our mind to something, we could absolutely complete it. Like, I have faith in our capabilities and tenacity, for sure. Would we want to willingly put ourselves in that position is the real question. I feel like if I had 6 months off of work to do whatever I wanted to do, like, adventure-wise, I would rather live out of a backpack and go, like, travel Europe for 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, instead. You know what I mean?
Or, like, do road trip, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's fun, you know? But just to straight up hike for 3 months, and for me, it's really, like, I think it's back in the mid-90s, I think she had said the trail as it was fairly... not new, but like it just been fully established like in the recent decade. So now I know it's very busy and I don't want that. Yeah. You know, like I don't want, because like what if the person you meet is a super weirdo and now you're going to see them for the next 3 months?
It's like when you're driving on the I-5 and you keep passing the same freaking weird person every like 10 minutes. Yeah, it's so annoying.
Yeah.
Like,
it seems like in this book, everybody like had a mutual kind of, you know, unspoken rule. It's like we just split up when we want to split up, but it's still like the social obligation that if I was doing that, I wouldn't want hovering over me.
No.
And I don't like that. That's like... You don't know when you're going to stumble across another person, and you don't know, like, all those things, like the danger. Are they weird? Like, how are they going to linger and follow me now? Like, in a Donkey and Shrek kind of situation, because I'm definitely the Shrek in that, you know? So, yeah, I think I'd rather load up my car and travel around, you know, for the 3 months, and do some day hikes.
Yeah, there you go,
version.
Day hikes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, like, had a full circle moment, like, in my mind of, like, hitchhiking and Matthew McConaughey comes and picks you up in his Lincoln.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
It was all worth it.
It was all worth it. All right, he says as he pulls up. Let's go. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe anywhere you like to listen to your favorite podcasts, including YouTube if you haven't yet. And then follow us over on Instagram and TikTok. We're at Besties and the Books podcast everywhere. So there you go.
I guess. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll see you next Tuesday, guys. Bye.